that is who we have. So we have, without further ado, Deputy Consulate General to the Midwest, Mr. Shahar Arieli, to give a better introduction. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to an interesting discussion with you. Somehow I get the feeling that it's going to be interesting. Look, I know this lecture was at least the way it was, the way the publicity went, to deal a lot about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which for sure I'm going to do, but I would like to put it in some context before, because I think in many ways the attention that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict got over the years did not serve the people of the Middle East, and I think with what is happening right now in the Middle East, people do come to realize that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not the central conflict in the Middle East, and it is not the reason for the instability and for the unrest that the Middle East is so famous for. In fact, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was used for a long time as a red herring, as a smoke screen, trying to cover for the real conflict and the real problem that the Middle East is suffering from it. And by now, I think people are starting to get a better understanding. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus a little bit on the real conflict in the Middle East, on the real cause for instability in the Middle East, and then I will refer to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which in many ways suffers from the very same problem that troubles the Middle East in general. So, when we're speaking about the Middle East, and trying to figure out what is going on there, especially now, we can say that in many ways the Middle East is a part of the world that skipped a century. In many ways, the 20th century, all the achievements of the 20th century, all the developments of the 20th century, in many countries of the Middle East, they are not present. So if you look at the advancements in democracy throughout the 20th century, about how the economies of the world evolved, in terms of economical development, in terms of human rights, unfortunately, the Middle East was not a real part of that. As you know, I represent the state of Israel. We suffered from it. We suffered from the fact that Israel is the only state, the only country in the Middle East with a democracy which is functioning. Maybe now Iraq is becoming more and more democratic. That is something good. We feel that if there were more democracies in the Middle East, it would be easier for us. In terms of economical development, let me just throw some figures at you. They said it's good to throw figures, so let me try. If you take the GDP figures, the gross domestic product, the size of the economy. So if you take the economy of Israel, which is a state, which is a country with 7 million people, Israel has the same GDP in absolute numbers as Egypt with its 80 million people, Jordan with its 6 million people, Syria with its 20 million people, Lebanon with 5 million people, the Palestinian Authority with between 4 to 5 million people. All of these countries combined, they have roughly 120 million people. Israel has 7 million people, and it's roughly the same size of the economy. So when I'm speaking about lack of economical development in the Middle East, that is what I'm speaking about. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean to brag about it, because being the richest kid on the block, which we are, doesn't really help your popularity. And it would be fair to say that Israel is not exactly popular in the Middle East. Look, in terms of literacy, in terms of books, it is is well known that all of the countries of the Middle East together publish less new books every year than the small country of Greece in Southern Europe. That is another fact that shows you that the Middle East has a lot to make up for. And what is actually the reason for everything which is happening now? The thing is that while during the 20th century it was very easy to suppress, it was very easy to hold out information, it was very easy for the rulers of the Middle East, which were autocratic rulers, all of them, it was very easy for them to hide from the population on what they are missing. And now with the advancements of the internet, social media, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, people are starting to understand what they don't have, and they want it all back. And they want it all back now. That is the reason, basically, for what is happening. But make no mistake, a lot of it is about economics. Because if you look at the economies of the Middle East, most of them are growing, either they don't grow at all, or they grow at a rate of 3 to 4% a year. That is not bad if you are a developed country. But in these economies of the Middle East, when the rate of the growth of the population is much, much higher than that, you have young generations which are trying to enter the market, which are trying to enter the labor market, and they don't have any future. Because in order to create jobs for these millions of people who are entering the market, you have to grow at a rate of 10% at least. And no economy in the Middle East is doing that. So when we look at everything which is happening, the most important question, of course, for us, for Israel, of course, since we are located in the heart of the Middle East, but also for the US, the major question is where things are going. And we would really, no one would be happier than us if things will go towards more democracy, more freedom, more liberalism. Nothing can be better for us. It's a known fact of history that no two democracies were ever engaged in war between them. And we are a democracy, and we believe that as more and more countries in the Middle East will turn democratic, less chances are for another war, and that is something that none of us want. But, again, to be fair, it's not clear whether or not it's going in this direction. Because if we look at the experience of past revolutions in the Middle East, and there were revolutions in the Middle East, we look at the Iranian Revolution of 1979, it also started out as a movement for more freedom, more democracy. Those forces who overthrew the Iranian Shah in 1979, they were not the Ayatollahs, they were not the radicals. It took the radicals about 1 year to hijack the agenda of the revolution and to create in Iran an extreme religious theocracy, anti-West, anti-US, anti-Israel, anti-you name it. That's the experience of 1979. By 2005, there was another revolution in the Middle East, this time in Lebanon. We had 1 million Lebanese marching in the street of Beirut, demanding that Beirut will come back to the days when it was called Paris of the Middle East during the 70s. Because in 2005, Syria controlled Lebanon. And by 2005, 1 million Lebanese, they decided they had enough. They want to free their country, they want something else for their future. They threw the Syrians out. With this, through those mass demonstrations in the street of Beirut, the Syrians could do nothing about it. And there was great hope in the air at 2005. But when we look back at the situation, when we look back at what happened to Lebanon, we see that by now the strongest force in Lebanon, both politically and from the military perspective, is the Hezbollah, which is, this is a strange creature, the Hezbollah. It is both a political party, which, to be fair, enjoys a lot of support from the people of Lebanon, but it's also a military organization, a terrorist organization, and stronger than the army of Lebanon. So although the Hezbollah controls Lebanon more from the shadow, not officially, they have ministers in the government, but the prime minister is not from Hezbollah. But still, nothing can happen in Lebanon without the approval of Hezbollah. This is the strongest organization in Lebanon. And it is very much, actually it's completely financed and backed and getting the instructions from Iran. Some other interesting facts. If we look at public polls which are published, which are done in the Middle East, well, actually, there are not a lot of public polls which are credible and were conducted in the countries of the Middle East. But one public poll from 1 year ago was done here in the States by an American university in cooperation with the Sadat Foundation, which cannot be suspected of being anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, anti-Middle East. And they try to see what the people of the Middle East think about international politics. So they surveyed, they did their survey in countries which are considered more pro-Western, like Egypt, like Morocco, like Jordan, and these were the results. Well, one figure which is not surprising is that 88% of the pollees saw Israel as a threat to them. While I may claim that it's not really based on reality, but that doesn't matter, that's what they think. But also 77% of them saw the US as a threat. And 70% of them, when they were asked what kind of leaders do you look up to, who do you see as role models, they named people like Hugo Chavez from Venezuela, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, Bashar Assad, the leader of Syria, Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, Osama bin Laden, and other figures, which the one thing they have in common is the fact that they are anti-West, anti-US, anti-West, of course, anti-Israel. So all these are warning signs, and I think that what we need to do is be realistic and acknowledge the fact that even though we would like to see the Middle East turn democratic, right now, the masses in the Middle East, the people of the Middle East, the Arab street, is not crazy about Israel, and I'm saying that they're not crazy about Israel, to say the least, and they're not crazy about the U.S. And we have to be realistic about that. Another thing is the issue of stability in the Middle East. Why is this area so unstable? It seems that the only constant thing that we can say about the Middle East is that it is a source of instability. Why is that? Well, for sure, one thing that contributes is the fact that it's not democratic. In Israel, we're not afraid of a revolution because we have one every 4 years through democratic election. If the other countries of the Middle East had a democratic system which is functioning, probably they did not have so much to fear from a revolution. But it's not just that. If you look at
I think you have to touch that screen.
okay. If you look at the borders of the Middle East, the countries of the Middle East, you can clearly see that it seems that they were drawn by rulers, just straight lines crossing through the desert. Look here, the Iraqi border, Syrian border, just a straight line. Jordan, just was done by rulers. Egypt, right there, Egypt and Sudan. It looks like it was done by rulers. And you know what? Those borders were drawn by rulers. By rulers of the French and British clerks, which sat down after they won World War I, and they just divided areas of influence between them in the Middle East, not taking into account the political, the ethnical, and the religious reality on the ground. So most of the countries of the Middle East, look, just to the words of the president of Egypt, Anwar Sadat. After he made a peace agreement with Israel, he was assassinated because of that, but never mind that. But when he signed with us the peace agreement, And he heard that a lot of Israelis are so happy because we made peace with the greatest Arab nation. So Sadat said, no, Egypt is not just the greatest Arab nation. It's the only Arab nation. And all the rest are just tribes with flags. Now, I can't agree with that, and I think that is too harsh. But there is a certain point in that, in the fact that in many places in the Middle East, if you scratch the surface, you will see tribal politics. And that is because of the way the borders were drawn. In many countries of the Middle East, there is not enough of common ground between the different minorities, the different ethnic and religious groups that compose those countries. So Libya, clearly what is happening in Libya now is that everybody is afraid that when Gaddafi will be thrown over, then you will see tribal politics in Libya. Then you will see Libya turn into a failed state when Al-Qaeda can thrive, terrorism can thrive, and so on. That is just the reality of the Middle East. Look at what happened to Iraq after the second war in the Gulf. When Saddam Hussein was toppled, and Saddam Hussein, like Gaddafi, I mean, it's hard to imagine any ruler which can be worse than Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi. But after Saddam Hussein was thrown, Iraq almost disintegrated. Why? Because it is composed of different minorities which don't have a lot in common. The Shiites, the Kurds, and the Sunnis. Once Saddam Hussein was toppled, immediately you had civil war, you had terrorism. That is because of this reality. That is the source for instability in the Middle East. Is the fact that these are repressive regimes, don't have democracy, the people don't have room to express their opinions. So when everything changes, it changes dramatically in revolution. And it is because of the ethnical and religious reality, which in many ways countries are composed of different entities which don't have a lot of common ground. That was a general background about the Middle East. Now a few words about the real conflict in the Middle East. I said that the conflict in the Middle East, yeah, if you Google it, and I Googled it more than once, if you Google the Middle Eastern conflict, the first result that you will see is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, that is just ridiculous. And I don't want to go into the figures of the casualties, but let's do them. Let's check the casualties. Until now, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has produced less than 10,000 casualties since 1948, which for us is a big number. For them is a big number. For us, for Israelis and Palestinians, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a tragedy. And even one casualty is one too many. But I said that I'm trying to get to the bottom of the Middle Eastern conflict. And if you measure the amount of casualties in the Iran-Iraq war, with 1 million casualties, of all the wars in Iraq, of the war in Afghanistan, of the Darfur genocide in Sudan, of the Algerian civil war, you have roughly 2 million casualties in the Middle East. And ladies and gentlemen, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is highly a fraction. It's not even a fraction of that. So what is the real conflict in the Middle East? And there is a conflict like that. And all of those wars that I mentioned, they have something in common. And that is the real conflict in the Middle East. And the real conflict is the conflict that the Arabs have about their own identity. But where are they going? Are they going towards democracy? Are they going towards the 21st century? Or are they going towards the 9th century? Are they going towards theocracy, or radicalization, and extremism? And there are very strong forces in the Middle East that try to pull towards that goal. I promised you some words about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Well, Look, here's what I think. And I know some of you would like to engage in polemics, and there is no problem about that. I can engage with you about polemics. We can argue who has better arguments, we or they. It's not about that. It's about both sides. Both sides have some good arguments. Both sides will probably stay in this land for all foreseeable future. It's not about the polemics. It's not about the arguments. It's about how we can live together and how we can reach peace. If you want to argue, if you want to engage in the polemics, we can do it. But that is not the best way to go if we think about the future. And the worst mistake that we can make is to think of it as a zero-sum game. Either us or them. We have so much to gain if we cooperate. We have so much to gain if we work together. Just think of the touristic potential that lies in this small piece of land. Small piece of land which is so important for the Jews, for the Muslims, for the Christians, for all the monotheistic religions. If this small part of land will not be connected with conflict, we will not have 3 or 4 million tourists a year, which we have today. We will have 20 or 30 million tourists per year. We will be like Italy. Imagine what that would do to our daily lives. So it's not about that. It's not about the argument. It's not about the conflict. It's about how to solve the conflict. And if we are thinking about the solution is well known. The solution has to be the two-state solution. The state of Israel, the nation state of the Jewish people, and the state of Palestine, the nation state for the Palestinian people. Those two states living side by side in prospect and in security, that is the only realistic solution. But this solution will not come without making compromises. It will not come without making concessions. And we've said time and again that we are ready for painful concessions to reach solutions. And we know what that means. Everybody knows what that means. For us it means conceding tangible assets, conceding a lot of land. This is something that we are ready to do. With regret, I said this, that the other side is not so clear what kind of concessions the other side is willing to make. For example, what they call the right of return, which is, how they phrase it, this is the right of anybody who is born of Palestinian descent to, no matter where he lives, to come back and enter the state of Israel. That is something that they insist on, and that is something that we cannot accept, because what they actually mean is allowing 4 or 5 million people who are Palestinian to enter to the state of Israel, and because of the fact that Israel is a democratic country, they will be allowed to vote. And once they do that, once there is no more state of Israel, there is the state of Palestine, all over the whole territory will become the state of Palestine, and this is something that we just cannot accept. Another thing is that they refuse to recognize Israel as the nation state of the Jews. Now, we are ready to recognize Palestine as the nation state of the Palestinians. They should do the same. Without doing that, it will be very difficult to reach solution. So all those concepts of territory, Jerusalem, these are problems that can be solved. Those issues of recognition of those nationalistic dreams that are not realistic, that is something that we must wake up from. It will not get us anywhere. I think it's about the time to open it for Q&A. I spoke a little bit about the Middle East, about the real cause for instability in the Middle East, about the fact that I think the role of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been receiving far too much attention if we want to understand the real nature of the problems of the Middle East. I spoke a little bit about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, trying to outline the solution, because I think that it's more important to look at the solution than to look at the arguments and the polemics that will not get us anywhere. And I would like to open the stage, so now it's really your game to play.